All right, those numbers are really not changing anymore. So if you are joining us and you came here for anything other than pre-construction done right enables construction done right, well, you're in the wrong place, but that's okay. It's still going to be a really fun discussion today. Um, we're really here to start talking about how we can reach our true potential in construction by focusing on the earliest phases of construction, which is pre-construction. And like I said, we've brought two experts here with us. Just to give you an idea, I'll be your host today. My name is Jeff Sample, and I'm the head of communications here at Join. Join is a unique, first of its kind collaboration platform for pre-construction. We're really here to solve the problems. We were built out of the industry by solving problems with people like Kelly and Terry that are joining us today and their expertise. I think it's really important that it's part of our DNA to not only solve problems, but be a part of that conversation. And so, in that spirit, I'm going to get off the microphone and I'm going to let them talk. So, I'm going to I'm really excited to have Terry with us. Terry was one of the first customers I ever got to talk to here when I joined the company. So, Terry Wong, pre-construction manager at XL Construction. Terry, why don't you give us a little bit of your background, a little bit of your perspective?
Yeah, so thank you, Jeff. I have been in the industry for about 11 to 12 years now, primarily in big healthcare ground up work. I actually spent most of my career in the field up into a project manager until making the switch into the pre-construction department as a pre-con manager, because it really spoke to me in terms of being able to make the biggest impact on a project, and I see the value in a good pre-construction process, and that's what really attracted me from going from operations, where sometimes you get handed a project already kind of fully baked, to pre-con, where you're kind of in more of a creative space and setting the job up for success. So that's me.
Awesome. Well, you bring a wealth of expertise, and I'm going to come back to that, being in the field and wanting to get into pre-construction. I think there's a lot behind that, but we'll get there in a second. My other guest today is Kelly Ortiz. Kelly's the director of estimating for McCarthy Building Companies, Inc. And he has been this is not his first time on stage with us here at Join. It's my first time with them, but Kelly's a grizzled veteran when it comes to being up here on stage with us. And it's been really impactful in the building of this product, and very vocal in support, but also in helping us understand what's going on. So Kelly, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about everybody in your background?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Hello, everyone. My name is Kelly Ortiz. As Jeff said, I'm the estimating director for McCarthy here in the Bay Area. Mostly focused on pre-construction, and then specifically with estimating, right? So, I've been in the industry for quite some time now, so 15 years. And, like Terry, I started out in the field and then transitioned over to the pre-con side, where I really just found my passion, right? And I know we're going to talk a little bit about it, but we're going to really drive home what pre-construction is and why it's so fun. So I look forward to the chat today with the team, and if you guys have any questions, just shoot them our way and we'll do our best to answer them.
That's awesome. Thank you. And that is the end of our slideshow for the day. So I'm hoping everybody was really looking forward to not having PowerPoint over and over and over again. It's never my goal. So I'm going to start this out. I want to level set. And those attending might actually, kind of be wondering already, why would we ask a question about, defining pre-construction up front? But as I've joined this industry and really gotten to learn what's going on, I think the definition of pre-construction is still evolving. And so, Terry, if you don't mind, I want you to define pre-construction, and then there's a lot of changes recently in it. So if you can kind of wrap that up, I know it's a big question, but can you give us a little bit of insight on your perspective?
Yeah, it is a big question, and I'll try my best. But my approach to pre-construction is really, it's an opportunity, right? It's an opportunity to set up the project and the team for really success through construction, and even after we leave. And by team, I mean, it's not just us, our trade partners, our design partners, but it's in our client facilities, any of the AHJs we work with throughout construction and beyond. And, at Excel, our pre-construction efforts aren't really limited to estimating and buyout, basically like a set of services. So we recognize that pre-con is an opportunity to impact design, budget, schedule, quality of the entire project. Because honestly, the ramifications of a good or bad pre-con effort can be felt through construction and even after we're gone, when construction is completed. So, and to kind of answer your second part of your question about recent changes, I wouldn't call this a recent change, but, finding that more and more projects are asking for more than just that set of services, right? Estimating, buyout, constructability. Clients are really looking for more creative but effective, right, approaches to their projects. Especially in the pre-con phase, because that's where most of the opportunity can be found, right? By the time you're in construction, that those bumper rails are kind of getting limited on what impact you can make. You're focused on getting the job done, or you should be focused on getting the job done, right? And bring up some specific examples on, within Excel, we really take that target value delivery approach very seriously, and we believe it's best practice, even if the RFP doesn't call for it, the client doesn't even call for it, right? So, it's a fundamental principle for us. And, for those who don't know what target value delivery is, LCI has a good definition about the whole process, but at the end of the day, the outcome that we're trying to strive for is, early budget management, transparent and live budget trending, right? And then leveraging collaboration and, expertise within the industry and different parties. And, we just develop strategies around, those themes, and then just apply them holistically, right? To really obtain maximum value, like using LCI's terms, maximum value, decrease waste, right? Which ultimately leads to a better client experience based on the projects that I've been on. So I hope that answers your question and in terms of pre-con, but yeah.
No, it's great because there really is there's no current definition. And I like that you're already expanding it beyond those traditional services that people think of and focusing it around the goals, right? You use the word experience, Terry, and I'm going to come back to that eventually, but I think that's the goal of all of the evolution and change that we're going through in construction. It's really changed this entire experience. It was very adversarial in its beginnings. And I think the modern construction experience is going to be very different and is becoming very different. So, I don't want to put any words in your mouth there, Kelly, but, give us the same kind of take on how you define pre-construction and any of the recent changes that are really driving where you're moving the industry forward.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Well, it's hard to follow up Terry. She took most of the content already that I would say, but yeah, one of the things is when we used to talk about pre-con, we would say design phase services, right? So a mixture of services, like we said, the buyout to onboard the subcontractors, the design management to, help our design build partners. And when I say partners, it's, the actual architects, engineers, but as well as the subcontractors. And then follow through with our estimating services, right? So it was kind of siloed in a way. But now really it's really setting the foundation to really build a successful project and really help the owner visualize and ultimately get to their ultimate goal, which is an incredible building or, an incredible park, wastewater facility, data center, whatever it may be. But it really is that foundation of alignment and teaming across everyone to create one goal to get us to the finish line and all be successful. So everybody really partner up and look forward to the next project that we're going to do together. And what I've seen, as the main difference is the willingness to open up and be transparent, and everybody looking forward to sharing their knowledge and how, no one's really trying to hide anything anymore. It's, everybody's just trying to make things easier for each other. And, a product like join has really expedited that process, and it's brought clarity to everyone. So that's really what I see, and I only see it getting stronger over the years.
I think there's a correlation between you. I know Terry took a few of yours up front, but you did a good job of bringing a lot of your own there, Kelly. And the two things I wanted to draw together is that experience and then that incredible building and the transparency and the goal. It seems like in both, it's really not about building just what you're building today, but it's about a partnership going forward. You know, it's
Definitely.
about, and in this industry, it's about return work and providing something different so that they can be that. And I'm going to go to you and go off script already, Kelly, because you used the word transparency and that's really impacting the process and impacting the experience. That's been a tough one in construction for them to really grasp transparency. How have you seen that kind of change recently?
Yeah, that's a buzzword, transparency there. It's kind of different because there's levels of transparency, um, and one of the ways that I've seen it evolve is really shifting that focus of alignment and teaming. There's a lot of different ways to do that. We meet, before anything. Terry's well aware of this, or she mentioned this before, that we have meetings primarily focused on, what the goals are of the project. This is before, even the, pencils hit the paper, or, we start analyzing any costs, or any, reports. But really, transparency is understanding what a partner is looking for in terms of information, right? So that doesn't mean opening up every single book and providing them with data dumps that don't make any sense and say, hey, here's all the transparency, here it is. It's catering that information to different individuals on the team where that individual can make sense of that information, right? And that's really the transparency and alignment that's been happening, right? Because everyone thinks a little different, right? And in construction, the beauty is that there's all of these different disciplines that come together for one goal, and that's to build an amazing project, right? And what makes sense to me won't necessarily make sense to you or Terry, but if we have something that will provide outputs that make sense to all of us, then that's where we have success, right? So that's transparency to me. Really working together to share information that we can all digest and really make good decisions for the betterment of the project.
That's a great cap of it because you're right. Transparency, people think of it as like, I got to give you everything. It's not everything. It's what you need and that you can trust it, right? Transparency drives trust. And that's, another core value of what we really need in the industry. So we can trust one another to go out there and be aligned on the same things, which brings me kind of the next question is talk about the process. You alluded to this a little bit, Kelly, that there's a process that you go through and that pre-construction teams go through to align with the projects and to align those goals. Everybody's goals in every project aren't the same. So talk a little bit about how you do that.
Well, first we need to understand, what the project is, what the delivery method is, where we're coming in, if it's design build, if it's CMR, if it's hard bid. There's a different process, but ultimately, it's setting up the job for success when it hits the field. So what we like to do is, get together, understand, what we're here to deliver in terms of the ultimate goal, which is creating a beautiful building structure, whatever it may be. But it's aligning first. So bringing in the architects, the designers, the owner, our internal team, talking about needs, lessons learned, and then identifying the tools that are going to make sense for this project, right? Because every tool is unique and it's not, a Swiss Army knife, so it doesn't ultimately work for everything. But understanding what's going to work. Once that, assigning the roles and responsibilities so that we can communicate clearly. And once we do that, then, we hit the ground running, and really everything else seems to fall into place. But, if we're talking about design build, I think the most important part of that is really the partnering, learning how to communicate with each other and understanding that we're all here to help each other. And if we do that right, more often than not, we end up with a successful project.
Yeah, that alignment sets you up in the beginning, right? It's not, we were talking about the title. We didn't put, pre-construction makes construction done right. But it enables it. And, Terry, go through a little bit about the process, that you've been involved in and the way you guys go about it.
Yeah. So, Kelly spoke to it a little bit, but the alignment sessions that we go through at the beginning of the job, this is very, very, very different from what I would call a project kickoff meeting, right? So this is something that is very critical to the early part of any project, because it can really set up the tone and the working environment for really the rest of the job. Things in the agenda that we include in an alignment session to get into more detail is like the behavioral alignment, right? Understanding the strengths and the motivations of each team member, right? Like Kelly mentioned, everybody has in their mind a different priority and what they value, right? What they're looking to get out of it. And it helps just, this helps the team work together more effectively with each other, having that understanding of what your other team member is looking for and looking to. And, it's the best way to, kind of leverage strengths and, maybe complement weaknesses. And then values alignment, right? Developing project strategies on how to, handle the client's priorities, maybe even the broader business case, right? Because that's always important to the client. How you want to measure performance, right, is important too. Having that understanding up front. What else is part of the agenda? Oh, we call it governance alignment, but it's a clear process around decisions, information flow. And it's a minor thing, but like who needs to attend certain meetings, right? Or else it just becomes chaos. I'm sure everybody has witnessed meeting overload, or the wrong person or in the meeting, or not the right individual in the meeting. And then last is we call it milestone planning and risk assessment planning. It's really a full milestone for the entire milestone planning for the entirety of the project, highlighting, like key dates, procurement struggles, design documents, right? And really just putting the pieces together so that we're marching to the same tone, the same schedule to ultimately start construction on time. And then reviewing very early on, kind of risk and proactively addressing them, because that's where you have I speak about opportunity in pre-con, it's to address risk. If that risk is never addressed and it comes and hits you in the face in construction, in my mind, that's too late, right? You really don't have the time to really adapt as quickly in construction as you do in pre-construction. So focusing that up front in the alignment session is really, really important, just getting it all out there, right? And then, as you can tell, we take a pretty strategic and thoughtful approach. But it's really important to revisit and have periodic follow-ups on these alignment sessions, again, separate from OACs and, monthly updates that we're contractually and used to providing. But, having been involved in a couple of these alignment sessions, I've always walked away learning something new and valuable about not only my client, but my trade partner, my, design, my design partner. But, it can be very exhausting at the end of the day. I'll admit, all day. You have to imagine these are like all day sessions walking through this agenda, but, nothing a good nap can't fix or anything like that. So, yeah.
I don't know where you guys in pre-con find time for naps. You guys are some of the busiest people, but that's why so kind of those OACs and those kickoffs and those other things, that's the communication, that's the contractual obligation. But it seems like the alignment meetings and those sessions are all about creating a culture that you can kick off and continue on throughout the project. And I have to agree, when we talk about pre-construction, we hear mostly about cost or schedule, Terry, but you really talked about risk. And I'm going to diverge us. Why is it so important to, and how does pre-construction play into mitigating risks?
So in pre-construction, this is something that's has changed, is that we're actually bringing a lot of operation-minded folks and the people who are leading the construction team into pre-construction to assess risks for the entire project. This is inclusive of, budget is always a risk, schedule is always a risk, but, inclusive of the entire team, including AHJs, facilities, et cetera. So kind of like I mentioned earlier, being able to holistically evaluate that with a comprehensive team early on gives you the ability to actually handle those risks early on, right? And you have the most time to actually mitigate that risk. Because on big projects, I liken it to a cruise ship. It takes a long time to make that cruise ship turn. It's not as nimble as most people think, but pre-con is really that time and that space to do it. Once you're in construction, that becomes incredibly limited, and it's a snowball effect of change orders and delays to projects, and it's almost like you've lost the opportunity to make that change. I hope that answers your question, Jojo.
No, it did. You nailed it. I mean, we used to hear it back in early days when I first started. It was like, well, we'll figure that out in the field. And you were just planning to fail.
Yeah.
You were planning to lose money. You were planning for a change order. And I think we've really gotten past that. I think in modern delivery. I'm gonna pivot because we do have a great question that came in. How can we effectively utilize subcontractor participation in TVD early in the project? How do we keep them competitive by awarding the project early in pre-con? And this is from Prashant Sharma. Thanks, Prashant, for the question. I don't know, Kelly or Terry, if either one of you really wants to take that one first, but Kelly, it looks like you unmuted. So let's go with you first.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about design build, right, we can utilize a couple of different methods to keep them competitive and utilize them in the target value design. Is, we onboard them early in the design, and we set up essentially a part A and B in their contract, right? So we'll release the pre-construction phase of the contract, and part of the award is essentially understanding or helping them understand that they have to help our team reach a target value, right? And part of the penalty may be that if they don't reach that target value by a certain point, we could actually, go a different direction. So we could go rebid that scope, and they have the potential of possibly not being awarded the construction phase. So that's one of the methods that I've seen used the most. More often than not, that doesn't happen, right? But I'm not going to say it never happens where the subcontractor doesn't meet that target value. But with more and more design build projects, it's more of the norm now that subcontractors are informing that target value design, and it is a huge asset to the project, right? Because for us, it's about really meeting the performance and the basis of design that the contract or that the owner's putting forth, which doesn't necessarily prescribe certain systems. It gives us the flexibility to really go look and find the most cost-effective solution for them. So we utilize them in a lot of different ways, and it's not limited all the time to specific trades as it was before, right? Before it was the big trades, the MEPs, the skin systems. Now, we're bringing in some of the drywallers in really early, the ceiling people really early, especially with some of the health care work, just because although ceilings don't seem very, very, hard, there's a lot
They're
to
hard on Oshkosh.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, I mean, hopefully that answered your question. I'm gonna let Terry kind of take it from here, see what her opinion is. But hopefully that,
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
go
was
ahead, Terry, for you.
actually, yeah, I was going to mention the Part A, Part B. And the one thing I would just like to add to Kelly's very comprehensive answer there is it starts at actually when we have the RFP out to our subcontractors, right? We outline not only really what we're asking for, but on the bid form itself, to get into more specifics, we're asking for an incredible amount of detail. But it still allows for the subcontractor to be competitive because it's not like a normal spec job where we're already outlining the manufacturers and vendors within the spec. It is at a BOE type level. So that partnering with the subcontractor starts, at procuring them. And then, like Kelly said, the Part A, Part B agreement, Part A agreement, part of the stipulation of getting the pre-construction work and moving forward with the construction contract, which is ultimately the subcontractor's goal, right? To build the job, not just to provide pre-con, is to meet that budget that they originally provided us, right? And, this is not, meted or we kick you out. It's a working relationship. It's a working process. If the client decides to add a floor, right, or add a whole totally different program, we're not going to stick it to our trade partners and our design team partners if that's what the client wants. But it does need to be, you set up that format early on during the bidding, right? So you get that information early on. So it's something that's traceable, trackable throughout pre-construction. So when it comes time to award the Part B, it's a much smoother process than, say, if you got a lump sum and all of a sudden it's 30% higher without any reason why, right? But you're too, what I call, pregnant with them to really move on because you need to start the project, right? So
Yeah.
there's a lot of nuances there, but we're trying to create that transparency, but also keep everybody accountable to what they signed up for in terms of a set of services upfront. So.
Well, you both hit on it, right? There was an alignment process up front. You created some KPIs and things to measure against, and you're holding people accountable, but transparent. And it's not about, stick as much as it is about carrot. Like, we're close and we're staying on and we're open with one another. So, and like you said, if they want to add, like, that ever happens. Oh, nobody ever wants to add an extra floor. Of course it happens.
Yeah.
Like, this is the evolution. And this is one of the reasons that this process isn't concrete, pardon the pun, but it's not, because construction's not concrete. It's fluid. It's a much different process. So I'm going to jump again to another one, because we got a good one here that I think comes up a lot. And I think both of you have, at least in our talks off to the side, have mentioned a little bit about it. Can you comment on public versus private projects? Specifically, how well does the pre-construction process and tools like Join work in those two contexts? And for which kind of projects do you apply them more often and most successfully? And this is from George. Thanks, George, for the question. I mean, both of you have kind of been open about this. So, can you talk about public versus private? And, Terry, I'll probably start with you here. And, what kind of projects and contexts?
This is actually a timely question. Currently, the biggest project I work on is with a public agency. And, I would like to say with private clients, yes, it's mostly negotiated work, easy fit, et cetera. And then people look at public projects like, oh, it's all public bidding. You have to follow the rules, and there's no really room for innovation, I guess, or transparency, right? So once you put that label on it, it can get kind of sticky. But I would like to say with the project that I'm currently working on, it is a public job, bond money and all. We are using Join very effectively. And not only that, but the client is actually, and this is how things are recently changing, public clients are looking to become more integrated and collaborative. They understand what their contract says, but willing and actually able to look into different, more newer approaches and, kind of provide change orders to the master contract to kind of help facilitate those more innovative and collaborative approaches, including design build or best value approaches, et cetera. So I would say, to answer the question, yes, there is a distinction between, private and public work, but I wouldn't stop the conversation, right, just because it's a public job. We've been very lucky at Excel with the client that we're working with on this public job, that they're very, very willing to listen, and they've actually been part of the process in creating a new way of delivering the job that wasn't traditionally part of what they do. So I hope that answers the question, Jeff.
It did. And Kelly, you seem to have a little take there too. Why don't you give your kind of input on it? Oh, you're muted. You're muted, Kelly. Hashtag 2021.
There we go. No, so I mean, just like Terry said, I mean, traditionally, the main difference between a private and public job is just the process. You have to go through very, very, a stringent process when it comes to the public jobs. And a lot of the times, previously, it wasn't there weren't a lot of design build deliveries. There was a lot of CMR or hard bid, which with hard bid, there seems to be a perception that you can't do TVD, target value design. However, that's not necessarily true, because you can still do that. And join allows you to kind of set up targets to possibly do some savings in terms of, maybe you can look at, the schedule to find savings there. That's one where the design necessarily doesn't really drive the critical path. But the main difference is that, right, the process, and it didn't really allow for as much integration as the public or the private projects allow for. However, that's changed, right? More and more the public projects, they're gearing or looking to do design build, and they want to learn, right? So they're starting to incorporate people that they didn't incorporate before. So they'll bring on subject matter experts to help them, understand, construction or systems that previously they would really just rely on the designers to feed them that information, and they were kind of hands off, and it didn't really allow for that integration to occur. So now it's really refreshing to see that everybody is looking to team, looking to understand. It's more of a culture of everybody wants to continue to learn, which is really exciting, because that's what construction is. You're continuously learning, and that's why I love it. Right, every project is different, and brings its own challenges. But if you have a team that's going to go to war with you or battle to figure out the big issues, it always makes it a fun experience. So the way that we utilize it is utilize join, at least, is with design build, it's setting target values for different trades, and then working with the designers, the subcontractors, the owners, to really reach those target values in a lot of different ways, right? Not just by cutting the design, but really to find efficiencies in the design. And then in terms of, CMR, we come in a little later, but it's very, very similar in process with join, still having the opportunity to influence the design. We set up, those target values with the owner, with the designer, internal team. And with these hard bids, believe it or not, we've set it up where we set up budgets for our internal team, and try to really target savings, right? To try to, enhance, our bottom line. So that's, an internal way that we use it, just because we don't have as much of the control with the design, or I shouldn't say control, as much of an influence when it comes to, completing the design. And typically we're already hitting the ground, right? We're going to be mobilizing really quickly. So that then just the goal changes, but join is flexible in that way where we can utilize it, and that not only the pre-construction phase but also the construction phase. So that's that's how we leverage the tool. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that was George, thanks for that question. Thanks to both you and Terry for Kelly for going through that. Cause the tool itself is flexible and that's true. But I think what's really important, especially in the public side of things, has been that what we're seeing in the private side is influencing, and the public side wants a little taste of that private, because there's this belief that the hard bid world that, oh, well, you always got it cheaper. Well, we've been in this business a long time. We know that's not actually the case. Like if you go up in total cost of ownership, you look at all those change orders, you look at all those things, ultimately a new delivery method and a new process can actually impact the overall cost of these and the quality, right? Like Terry, you said it earlier, if we're in construction and you're in that hard bid world and you're trying to make those changes, they're going to have less of an impact. So, and I think it's cool to see, Kelly, that you're talking about those municipalities and those, public organizations starting to want their piece and to learn it. It's always been the process, right? You can be more nimble, you can be more innovative when you are private because you have more control. And well, we want to go through that process there, but we also then when it's, a solid and we know these new delivery methods work, we can do it. So I'm going to move us on though, because you kind of talked about join and I want to talk about tool sets in particular, because part of this process is once you align the project and the process, how do you go about determining the tools that are going to support it? There's a new paradigm in what you guys use and what has to be used. So, Terry, why don't you talk a little bit about how you go through that Excel?
Yeah. So with tools and software specifically, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's actually pretty exciting that there's a lot of new tools starting to be available in this pre-construction space, inclusive of Join. But I always try to keep in mind when looking at tools and softwares that they should never dictate the process or their workflow. I think that's very, very important. And I find myself repeating that a lot to projects where it can easily turn into an obstacle or, an excuse really, when it really shouldn't be. And if it ever does, I kind of question why we're using the tool in the first place if it's not, it is dictating a certain workflow or dictating a certain process for us, right? But some, kind of basic criteria is accuracy, right? It needs to be accurate, and that's like number one. Does it save time or does it waste time? Do we already have something that already does it just because it's a competing space and there's a lot of redundancy sometimes between systems? Project management systems in the field is a good example of that. But specifically for like collaborative projects, where we're looking to incorporate other organizations. I think learning curve is really, really important. It can't be something that you hand over to another organization like a sub or a design partner, and it takes their team like a month to learn how to use it and be effective in it, right? Security provisions, right, in terms of accountability. And the tool can't be so complicated to read or understand that it kind of loses its message, right? And therefore kind of its value, right? It's supposed to help the team stay on track with each other, not be an obstacle or an excuse on why they don't understand what's going on. So I think the messaging and how the complicated information can be distilled to something more simplified so people can get value of it and make a decision and move forward is really important. And I think, in my opinion, that's where, Join adds a lot of value specifically to the budget, and budget trending. It doesn't just line up really well with our target value delivery approach, but it communicates actually a pretty complicated budget sometimes to something the project team can understand within, an hour update, right, every week kind of thing, versus what traditionally would be like a 100-page Timberline or Destiny printout, which, is still there at milestone estimates, but, and it's not like I don't miss those, days-long estimate reconciliation meetings that we all have to go through. But, it does help really communicate complicated budgets, quantity and cost, and options to the design that may not really be drawn yet. And that's kind of where the value is in pre-con, we're constantly trying to complete the picture with design assumptions. And I think something like Join has really kind of helped us make those holistic decision making we always talk about with TVD delivery and stuff like that. So yeah.
Excellent. Kelly, anything to add there?
No, just a little bit. I mean, the approach is very similar, right? You know, everything that Terry does, that just went through is certainly, you know, very similar to what we do at McCarthy. You know, just to add to it, you know, we also like to just understand, um, you know, what our partners are, you know, used to doing and how they're used to looking at information, right? And what their capabilities are. You know, certain design firms, you know, start with, you know, SketchUp, others start right in Revit. And then how can we leverage, you know, those that start in Revit, you know, really inform what we're trying to do and provide to the owner, right? So, you know, looking at it in each of those, you know, kind of windows of, okay, how does our designer work? How does our owner work, and how do they like to see the information? Um, you know, do we need to reinvent the wheel if they already have a process that we can jump into or a tool that they like to use? You know, so do we have to, you know, use one of ours and push it on them? That's always the conversation. But again, just like Terry said, the beauty of Join is that it's extremely flexible, right? It's super flexible, and it's great at articulating complicated information to many stakeholders. So the internal team, the external team, to, you know, the common person that's not used to looking at numbers. It really just simplifies it in ways that hadn't been done before. So that's just kind of the minor difference, but I'm sure it's still the same when it comes to what Terry was talking about.
And it's important as this ecosystem's growing. You know, you mentioned it, Terry, that, you know, there's a lot in the project management side, and there's a lot when we get to the construction execution, when you're talking about not only all the things that we're using to build, but all the new technologies that we're using for reality capture and BIM and IoT and those things that, you know, are setting up. So, you know, it does seem like one more tool. And if you're a trade contractor or an owner, you might be on, you know, running 10 different projects. So you got 10 different suites. So it has to be simplicity. It has to fit the process and the alignment. So I imagine that happens in the alignment phase where you start to talk about the tools, et cetera, right?
A little bit, I would have to say. I say that at the alignment session, it's about strategy, right? And then we can have maybe a deeper conversation on day 2. You know, what can we utilize to help or facilitate that strategy? So, and that's what I try to keep in mind whenever we do alignment sessions and picking tools and softwares. Is it should never dictate the process. We shouldn't say outright, we're using Join on this project. How do we fit our processes and workflows to optimize Join? It should be the other way around, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think that conversation is like step 2 of a lot of steps to set up a project.
Always people, always process, then technology. You do it any other way, it's really not going to work out as well as you'd like it to work. I mean, it can, but you're right. And that flexibility needs to be built into the products that, you know, that you're utilizing in all phases and of the construction continuum. So it's important. And you kind of touched on this a second ago, Kelly, and I'm going to jump to a question. And how do you deal with owners who have unrealistic budget expectations during pre-construction? Javier, that's it. You know, I don't know that any of these folks would be sitting with me if they had all the answers, but I think you kind of touched on it, Kelly. So I'll let it kind of go to you. How do you handle those expectations and that budget conversation?
Well, first we use Join. No, you know, Join is a great tool. But really, what we try to do, and you know, we try to educate the client as much as possible, right? And what we try to do is come to the table with solutions in a way of helping the owner understand that we can provide them with what they need, but not necessarily what they want, right? So, helping them distinguish between this is what's needed and required, and these are kind of the wants. But it all goes, down to that alignment session again, really understanding, the owner's, wishes, and really what drives them, and their the goals for the project, because really understanding that will help us, provide some solutions to help them understand, hey, we can't meet this budget, and here's the reasons why. However, here's what we can provide that will get you as close as possible to the ultimate goal for this project. And those decisions are really, or those conversations are hard, right? Because we want to build good relationships and get repeat clients, and we don't want to upset anybody, right? We want to please our owners. But more often than not, the owner will respect and be understanding if you're just honest, right? So honesty is key. And it's hard to deliver bad news. It really, really is, right? And if we just kick the can down the road, it isn't going to solve anything. It's just going to ultimately cause more problems. So it's good to have those conversations up front, and the teaming really allows for us to be candid about what we can't deliver, and that's really what we do, right? We provide honest feedback. We try to bring solutions to the table, and then we leave it up to the owner to make the decision, right? So really that's what we do. We have to expose it as soon as we can, and that goes for say if a budget is very close, and guess what, we made we made an error that's going to really impact the project and really maybe not provide them with something that they wanted. We have to have those conversations as well, and and that way we're all happy at the end, and more often than not, they will respect that and be happy at the end of the day.
I'm going to kick it to you, Terry, but I was talking to somebody recently and they said bad news delivered early is actually just an option. That now it's a decision you can make. The earlier
I like
you
it.
deliver the bad news, the less of bad news and the more of an option and a decision it is. So I'll kick it over to you, because Kelly, you made me think of that right away.
Yeah, and I mean that's a great segue, because some people, I hear this phrase a lot, but pre-construction can be like kind of the honeymoon period, right? We're all getting to know each other. We're still teaming. We're not in construction yet, the heat of the battle, et cetera. But I would like to stress that you can't kick risk and decisions down the line without having a larger impact to the job and less time to essentially mitigate that risk and the options. So I really like how you phrased it, Jeff, where it's bringing up bad news early makes it just an option. And to Kelly's point as well, I think traditionally, if you're thinking about estimating and pre-construction way back in the day, our service level was providing a binder of the estimate, right? And, good luck, kind of thing. The number's here and the number went here between two periods of time. But now, the client is actually seeking more than just, a print and dump it on their desk kind of thing. It's not their problem, it's our problem as well. We're here to bring solutions, not only explain the delta so that they understand like where exactly there was growth, right? But then also come to the table with, hey, here are options to get us back into budget, or if you think this is where you want to spend additional money, let's have a conversation about that as well. Leaving all of that compounding through the pre-construction process to say when you need to GMP or, issue an NTP for construction, that does nobody any good, right? So being able to address those challenges and those budget upticks or down throughout pre-con is part of the project. It shouldn't be just good news throughout. If I think that if I ever find a project where it's just good news throughout, I'm like, something's wrong. Like funding is going to run out sooner or later, or this client is just invincible, right? Which we don't run into a lot. But at the end of the day, you know, it is, you gotta bite, it's like bite-sized chunks versus then waiting to when you have to GMP and you have no more time. And that's when projects get stopped. That's when projects get delayed. That's when board of supervisors and executives just take a look and like, what has happened to this project, right? And you never really want to get to that point. So, but I agree with Kelly, it's never great news to deliver. I think both Kelly and I are kind of used to being that person sometimes to deliver the bad news. So we've been in that position before. But it is just important to maintain that relationship by being truthful the entire time. So
yeah, we're going to call you guys pre-construction therapists. You know, you're really taking them through the process of having, and Javier, you know, my advice would be learn how to do, you know, learn about difficult conversations, because what you're talking about is delivering reality, right? It's not that it's sugar-coated one way or the other. It's that, you know, these are the true impacts. And when you talk about target value design and delivery, you know, you're sitting down with that owner and focusing on, listen, you know, this is what you want. You want all of this, but the reality is, here's what you value. Here's what we can deliver. Here's where we can cut that won't impact that value. But if we cut here, it's going to impact value. So, and again, all that alignment really comes into play. All of that process comes into play, and you set yourself up along the way to kind of get everybody on the same realistic page. So I think it's a fantastic migration of where we're headed in pre-construction. So we have a couple minutes. If you guys have any more questions, let us know. I want to kind of wrap it up. We only have a few minutes, but collaboration is like this really hot topic right now. Just like you said earlier, Kelly, that transparency is the buzzword. You know, collaboration is one, but how do you determine the right amount of collaboration to keep teams communicating, but then also stay focused on deliverables? So Kelly, I'm going to start with you on that one.
Well, we have to first look at, you know, the size of the project, right? Who's on the team, and then like I mentioned earlier, I probably sound like a broken record. We really like to understand how we all operate, right? So that we can find the value in certain meetings. Right? We don't want 100 people in one meeting if they're just going to be there doing nothing. So when are you bringing value to the table? You know, who are the stakeholders that need to be there? And then once we understand that, it's understanding the information flow and the way the information is going to be digested. So, you know, having, you know, the conversation of, hey, who's going to look at this information? How do they like to look at it? Then we can, you know, within Join, you know, just to be more specific, is going and setting up those permissions of, you know, when they log in, what are they going to look at? Are they just going to look at, you know, the overall budget, or do they want to go into and look at all the data and be able to comment and upload, right? Some owners, they say, you know, I just want to look at the high level. One of my favorite words that has, or kind of sayings is, who are the surfer viewers, right? The ones that are just going to glide across the information and look at it high level, and take it in. And, you know, who's really going to be, you know, boots on the ground putting together, you know, the information. And once we really understand that, then we can, you know, set the tools in place that will allow us to communicate in the ways that we need. In the beginning, when we were really using these collaboration tools, it was getting really muddy. Like, too many people were in there. There's way too many, you know, work breakdown structures, way too many reports, you know, and, you know, we said, oh, you know, you had to take a step back and say, okay, you know, what are we looking for, right? Who needs what? And once we did that, we were able to, you know, cut down all the waste, reduce the amount of people in the meetings, you know, get the right people at the meeting at the right time, and then provide them with the information that they're looking for. So it's a, you know, project by project, you know, outlook or just analysis in terms of the collaboration. But collaboration is key, right? You always want that. And the cool thing about collaboration is that it's internal and external, right? With design build, we used to have the pre-construction phase and then the construction phase. Now they're overlapping, right? So bringing in those field partners that are gonna take what we're putting together in the design phase and implement it out in the field. How we can collaborate with them is just as important as how we collaborate with our design partners and our owners. What and Join has facilitated that because it allows them to see the history of how we're communicating with our subcontractors, how cost came to be and how it developed, right? So it's a tool that helps us kind of transition and then help them take on the trade packages that they're going to manage out in the field. And it's also making it a lot easier for them to integrate that conversation into our other tools that we have. So hopefully that just gave you a little bit of insight. I mean, I could talk about it forever, but
Oh,
I want to give Terry a chance, especially because we're running out of time here to kind of chime in.
yeah, Terry, go ahead. I don't want to get in the way. That was great.
Yeah, no, I think Kelly added a lot to it, but I understand that sometimes collaboration and integrated project approaches can actually be sometimes really frustrating, can feel kind of unproductive sometimes and a bit of a churn, right? But at the end of the day, to stay effective and on schedule, it's important to have that clear milestones set up front, how the decisions are going to be made, et cetera, who needs to be a part of what. And I always like to challenge ourselves. Just because we can doesn't mean we have to. Does it at the end of the day provide value to this team? We can have someone just number crunch in the back, but if it doesn't provide any value at the end of the day, why not just summarize it and save ourselves some time, but we still get the same output that we're looking for and the same messaging. So, I think, I'm going to be honest, it may take a couple of tries to get, to finally be effective and find the right level of collaboration. It might take, a couple of weeks, a couple of months for a team to really jive. But really, once it sticks, the team really starts to flow. And, I think Kelly and I have been involved in enough projects where you can see that cadence kind of naturally form, right? Where a natural cadence kind of is developed for the project, and individuals as well as teams are really focused on the end goal, and they kind of know their tasks, their roles and responsibilities, and are getting the information they need, but also providing the output they need to be providing as well to kind of keep the whole team moving as this big machine. So at the end of the day, I think finding that rhythm, that cadence for the project team is really, really important. And that means they're still communicating, right? The expertise is still there. You're getting the updates that you need to get updated on, but you're still achieving those project deliverables throughout the project. So,
Yeah, that's great. Really focusing on that lean, just enough, just in time, just the right information to where they need to be. Forget about the waste and really focus everybody on the team. So it's really, we came right up to the hour, and I cannot thank both of you enough. I'm going to give a little secret away on Kelly. Kelly actually joined us from his vacation, so I would really like to get him back to his vacation and enjoying himself. Kelly, thank you so much for joining us here. Thanks for all the input over time, and the thoughtfulness you've given us that have really helped us here at Join kind of develop this product, but also develop a partnership. It's really impactful for us. So thanks for joining us and taking your time off of your vacation to be here with us.
Glad to join. It's always fun to hang out, with Join and Terry. We were actually colleagues in her previous life, so it's nice to see her again. Always happy to help.
Thanks, and let people know where they can get you if they want to connect with you.
Yeah. If they want to connect with me, I can put my email in the chat here. If you guys have any questions, interested in what we do a little bit more, always happy to have a conversation and help out. So feel free to reach out on email, and I'll actually put my cell phone on there too.
Thank you very much. That's great. Terry, thank you. I have to personally thank you that you were one of the first customers I ever spoke to when I got here at Join, and you've really helped open my eyes to not only what goes on in pre-construction, how the tool's used, but also about the thought process behind it. So thanks for taking your time out today and joining us for this conversation.
Yeah, no problem. And I'll do similar to Kelly, just stick my email and my phone number on there so people can reach out.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. If you were interested in anything you had to hear here, reach out to these folks. If you're interested in the software at all, you can find us at join.build, or you can reach out directly to me. It's jeff@join.build. If you want to share this recording, it's going to be sent out to you really shortly, just as how long I can take to edit it. We appreciate having everybody here today and all of the input and the questions. It's been a pleasure to be here. And thank you all for coming. Take care.
Bye.